Something just changed in this war, not gradually, not over weeks, but instantly, because Iran has now said something that removes every remaining limit from this conflict. Zero restraint. That is the phrase being used. A direct warning that if its energy infrastructure is targeted again, Iran will respond without limits. And that single statement tells you everything about where this war is heading, because until now there were still boundaries, military bases, command centers, strategic targets, but now those boundaries are collapsing. Let's break down what actually happened, because the sequence matters. It started with one of the most critical strikes of this entire conflict, the South Pars gas field, the largest natural gas field in the world, responsible for a massive portion of Iran's energy supply and a key part of global gas markets. That field was hit, production disrupted, facilities damaged, and that attack triggered something much bigger. Iran responded not just with retaliation, but with escalation. Missiles and drones targeting energy infrastructure across the Gulf. Qatar's Ras Laffan gas complex was struck, one of the most important LNG export hubs on the planet, damage severe enough to disrupt global supply. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE also came under attack. Refineries hit, facilities damaged, fires reported. This was not random, this was coordinated. And it marked a turning point, because this is no longer a war focused on military dominance. This is a war focused on economic pressure. Now let's zoom out, because what's happening right now is bigger than any single country. The Strait of Hormuz is the most important energy corridor on Earth. Around 20% of global oil supply moves through that narrow passage. And right now that corridor is under threat. Shipping has slowed. Tankers are avoiding the route. Traffic has dropped dramatically. Let that sink in. The system that powers the global economy is starting to break under pressure, and the markets reacted immediately. Oil prices surged above 110 per barrel. Gas prices jumped. Global markets dropped sharply. And this is just the beginning, because Iran is not just responding, it is sending a message that the battlefield has now shifted from land to energy, from territory to global supply chains. Now here's the part most people are not fully understanding. Iran knows it cannot win a direct military confrontation against the combined power of the United States, Israel, and their allies. But this is not about winning militarily. This is about raising the cost of the war itself. By targeting energy infrastructure, Iran is doing three things at once. It is increasing global energy prices. It is putting pressure on Gulf economies. And it is forcing those governments to pressure Washington. This is not chaos. This is strategy. And it is already working, because now every country connected to global energy is being pulled into this conflict indirectly. Europe is facing supply shocks. Asia is watching shipping routes collapse, and the United States is dealing with rising fuel costs that directly impact domestic politics. Now let's bring the United States into focus, because at this stage, everything runs through Washington. The United States is deeply involved. Military deployments, naval forces, air defense systems, and now it is facing a new kind of pressure, not just military pressure, economic pressure, because every spike in oil prices is felt immediately at the pump, in inflation, in public perception, and that creates a dangerous dynamic, because the longer this conflict continues, the higher the cost becomes, and that cost does not stay on the battlefield, it moves into politics. Now let's ask the question that defines everything going forward. Is this still a contained conflict, or has it already become something bigger? Because what we are seeing right now is not just escalation, it is transformation. From a regional war into a global energy crisis. And once that transformation begins, it becomes much harder to reverse. And once that transformation begins, it becomes much harder to reverse, because energy is not just another sector, it is the foundation of the global system. When oil moves, economies move. When gas stops, industries stop. And right now, both are under pressure. Now let's bring this back to the strategy behind it. Because what Iran is doing is not random escalation. It is calculated. Iran understands that it cannot outmatch the United States and its allies in a direct military confrontation. But it doesn't need to. It only needs to change the cost of the war. And by targeting energy infrastructure, it is doing exactly that. Every strike on a refinery raises oil prices. Every disruption in gas supply creates panic in markets. And that panic spreads from traders to governments to ordinary people. This is pressure that travels fast, faster than missiles. Now let's shift focus again, because this is where the situation becomes global. China. China depends heavily on energy imports from the Middle East. A large portion of its oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. So any disruption directly affects its economy. But here's the other side of it. Crises create openings. If Gulf countries begin to feel that the current system cannot protect their interests, they will start looking elsewhere. New partnerships, new trade systems, new security arrangements, and China is ready to step into that space. This is how global power shifts begin, not with one event, but with a series of pressures that slowly change decisions. Now let's go back to the Gulf, because this is where the impact is immediate. These countries are under direct pressure. Their infrastructure is being targeted. Their economies are at risk, and they are being pulled deeper into a conflict they did not fully choose, but they cannot step away. Geography keeps them exposed. Alliances keep them involved. Economics keeps them connected. This leaves them with very limited options: escalate, de-escalate, or absorb the damage, and none of those options are easy. Now let's ask the most important question. Where does this go next? There are three possible paths. The first is controlled de-escalation. Back-channel talks begin. Strikes slow down. Energy infrastructure is avoided. Markets stabilize. Pressure decreases. But right now, there is very little sign that this is happening. The second path is sustained escalation. More strikes, more targets, more countries involved. This leads to prolonged instability, higher oil prices, global economic pressure. This is the direction we are currently moving in. The third path is the most dangerous: a full regional war, where the conflict is no longer indirect but fully engaged across multiple countries. If that happens, the Strait of Hormuz becomes the center of the conflict. And if that corridor is significantly disrupted, the consequences will be global, not temporary, structural. Now here is the reality. We are not at that point yet, but we are moving closer, because every escalation pushes the system further, and every response raises the stakes. This is what makes this moment critical, because once energy becomes the battlefield, the margin for error disappears. And when the margin for error disappears, small events can trigger massive consequences. This is no longer just about who strikes next. It is about how far this spreads before something forces it to stop. And right now, there is no clear stopping point. We are watching a system under pressure, a region under stress, and a conflict that is redefining itself in real time. And the world is now directly connected to what happens next. Because when energy moves, everything moves with it. And right now, energy is at the center of the battlefield.